So,
Yeah,
hello
great.
everyone. Thank
Good
you for being
morning.
here. Good morning, Sofia and Gudrun.
Mhm.
Is morning in
Good
Brazil. We
morning.
are all in Brazil, but I welcome all participants from around the world. Thank you for being here on the third day of the Earth Action Hub. We are very, very happy to make it happen, and we see all those amazing interactions in the discussion forums, in the chats, and we are very grateful for you for being here with us. And now I have the honor to present and introduce this amazing conversation between Sofia Carvalho and Gudrun Götsch. I don't know if I'm saying the name in the best way, but they are amazing mothers, farmers, and I would like to say keepers of the food secrets because you know so many things. And I hope you will all enjoy this amazing conversation.
Mm.
And I'll leave the room for this amazing woman. I don't know if Sophia or Good who will start, but please feel free to start. Mhm.
So, good
I'll let
morning,
you go first,
people.
Sophia.
Okay. First of all, thanks for the invitation, Samia. It's all the more important for us to be talking about climate changes, which are part of the major environmental, ecological, and social crisis that humanity has been going through for far too long now. And it's really interesting always to be putting the food theme into the table of this discussion, because if there's one thing that has maintained and made possible for human beings to be right now doing whatever we are doing is through the energy sources that are available in nature, and we digest it and make our lives possible through foods. So it's a pleasure for me to be here with Gudrun. Gudrun is a person who has a very important role actually in my pursuit of becoming effectively a farmer. And I think she doesn't remember too well this passage in my life, but I will point out here because I think it makes sense in the context of what I want to bring out to this conversation, which is basically I as a student I studied agroecology, and my inquiries when studying agroecology were really, trying to come up with answers to the question, which is what should we as humans be doing now to build a reality where these extreme weather conditions, lack of resources, hunger, and social injustices were no longer mainstreams. This is part of the inquiries that made me study what I studied. And there were many theoretical bases that really helped me understand that agriculture is the main human activity that has transformed the world, even though it's a very recent activity also in our history and the planet's history. It's been only about 10,000 years since we've been producing food in agricultural systems and pastures. So I had quite a theoretical basis for all of this discussion and to understand how we need to promote agricultural farming techniques and develop agricultural methods that meet the necessity of not degrading natural ecosystems, but rather enriching the ecosystems with our activities. So I had plenty of like a theoretical basis for that, but really it was when me and my father went on a journey to visit Ernest, who is Gudrun's father. It was when we decided to take up this journey and go in the forest they've planted and managed, and from where they harvest the food they eat mainly. It was when we went to this journey that me and my dad arrived first at Gudrun's farm, at Gudrun's house. and she was there, and we came in the very right time. It was lunchtime. She was there with Sofia, by the time her only child, and we had for the main meal for lunch, biju de pupunha, which is a meal basically she has made up from the fruits of this palm tree, which is pretty abundant in Brazilian forest territory. And me, as a Brazilian myself, who grew up all my life in Brazil and all, I had never even tried eating that fruit. So for me and my dad, it was very interesting. My dad himself, 60 something years old, neither did he know this, how to eat this fruit. We generally know how to eat the palm heart of the palm tree, but the fruit, we don't have the culture, the food culture to eat it. So it was already quite a very impressive experience for me and my father, because we were there at this farm with these, let's say, foreign looking, like two beautiful persons, Gudrun and Sofia, and they were making this meal out of resources that are pretty abundant in Brazilian forests, with which me and my dad had never come to know of. And it already, it goes on to a discussion which for me is very deep, which is coming out of the food diet mainstream, where we Brazilians have been very deeply engaged into thinking that, if there is no rice, no wheat, and no potatoes, there is no like substantial energy source in your meal. It's so what I'm trying to say is that this first encounter with Gudrun at her house, and the meal she prepared, and they were eating very naturally. It was just, a quite normal meal for people inserted in the ecosystems they are. This was to me a very remarkable experience. And from this moment, I started learning too much, me and my dad, actually. And my dad, and then after all, we met Ernest afterwards, and we walked through the forest him and the family had planted over the decades. And we experienced such different flavors, textures, and a new food vocabulary that put us in a very odd position, really, as Brazilians who have traveled a lot towards Brazil, who have a strong, let's say, food culture within our house, but we were at that moment presented with very different sources of food that were coming directly from forest systems that this family has so inspiringly been planted. To me, that was one big lesson, and I understood that to be my life pursuit. And then today, I am a farmer who live with my partner and 3 kids and my auntie, and basically the agricultural techniques and the farming techniques that we used for our production, they are mostly inspired by trying to understand how is it that the forests maintain, that forest creates life out of very simple molecules. So, for instance, we are very focused on understanding that plants are able to use the free energy and abundant energy from the sunlight and put that together with very simple molecules like CO2 and water. And out of these simple molecules, they create such complex matters, like the wood, like leaves, like the food. And this is a process. So through photosynthesis, basically, plants and the forest are able to create conditions for animal lives to prosper. So we need to understand ourselves as, first of all, animals inserted in ecosystems. And what our conventional agriculture has been doing for far many years is really suppressing the ecosystems in order to produce the human needs. So that is already very well discussed, and I don't intend to go through this here because even we don't have enough time for it. But it's pretty clear how it's not a wise option. It's not a wise way to be to have us degrading life on planet Earth. It comes down back towards us, back to us as well, and so basically our food systems production is based on agroforestry systems in which we have learned throughout many experiences, throughout observing, throughout many processes, that we need to make food production to work within a context where we help, where we also produce a very good, important supply of food and shelter for microorganisms in the soil. It might sound quite distant for people who don't work and whatever, but really,
can I just bring something?
Yeah, sure,
like,
go ahead.
I think we are so much used to extracting food from the soil. Like, we plant to harvest for us to eat, but we also have to plant for the earth to eat. You know, we need to nurture the soil. We need to nurture not just us, but the soil too. So
exactly.
our the mainstream agriculture, it's an extraction. You know, we only take, we don't give back anything to the soil, and that's making all the devastation happening. You know, and with this food forest systems, we bring in an agriculture where we harvest more abundantly and more like in a bigger scale, like different fruits and food. And we also nurture the soil with different, you know, leaves, branches, whatever, because every plant, it has different micronutrients. And that's not only for us. The more diverse our food is, the more micronutrients we will ingest and will nurture our body. And for the soil, it's the same thing. The more different plants we have there to prune, to put the organic matter down to the soil, the more micronutrients the soil will have, and so on, you know. And that just goes better, because the more micronutrients the soil has, our food we're going to harvest in the future will have more micronutrients too. So that's, you know, it's an upgoing scale.
Yeah, precisely. And without enhancing this very strong, vivid life on soil, we will always be too much dependent on bringing all the resources that weren't naturally available there, and we're bringing from elsewhere, from sometimes mining activities, to get these micronutrients for you to supply the necessity that was the necessity that was created throughout years of degradation, throughout years of burning and chopping down vegetation in order to produce food. So so that's the dilemma that we don't want to be working with, right? Gudrun? That's the these are the kind of solutions that we seek with farming techniques to bring about in our farming systems, and have as a result abundant production of food, of not only food for ourselves, but as you said, food for the living processes in a whole. And this is a very interesting point for us to think about, because I feel capitalist, individualistic societies are very based on the surplus value of the labor that goes on through the exploitation of basically workers. And then the forest,
it's not just the exploitation of, it's not just the exploitation of workers, but the exploitation of everything, you know, of the soil, of people, of the air, of, you know, everything. It's just an exploitation. It's not based on abundancy.
Yeah, but what I mean to say, thinking exactly. But when I mean to say, thinking of it in our social systems, is that what a big lesson that forest brings about into us thinking of our social systems, because as you were saying, like when a monkey eats, when a monkey climbs up a tree and he prunes few of the branches in order to reach out the fruit, and not only in order to reach out the fruit, but while he's trying to reach out the fruit, and when he finally reach out the fruit and he's eating partly this fruit, and he also takes some of the seeds and plants it in elsewhere, he's not doing work, he's not putting a service into nature that's only going to be used for him, right? Like nature has its strategy.
It's like you know, Deepak Chopra says, like, you know, flowers don't try to bloom, it just blooms. The earth doesn't try to spin, it just spins. You know, the animals, they don't try to be anything, they just are. And we humans, we are so much trying to do and be something and not being it at all, you know. So just be, just do, and fulfill your part in all this ecosystem.
Yeah, and I feel good for us to just be and just do and fulfill our part. It takes really a re-education of ourselves that goes through the observing of how nature operates, right? And in observing how nature operates.
In agroforestry, like in the food forest systems, we're always like, when we start something with like we start planting, we always look around like, what do I have available here to start my patch, you know. So it's always like look around, what do I have available, and to do the best with what I have, in order to nurture the soil, in order to get a better harvest. And I'm trying to bring this in with food, you know, with in the kitchen. Like, what do I have available here around with which I can prepare a good meal? Of course, I buy some things, but, you know, I think it's like most local you can cook, the better it will nurture you, because you're there, you know, in that place, and you're cycling the nutrients. And I think it's also, you know, the system, the universe is so perfect that in every place that we live, we have nurturing plants, and also medical plants. So, you know, we have our medical plants here in Brazil, and in Europe there's other medical plants, and in the United States, there's other medical plants, and the nurturing plants too. You know, the food which is local to that place, which, you know, and I think the more we can get back to eat actually what is native to the place we live, the better our health will be. And the more local medical plants we can use, you know, I think the world is so perfect that it gives us everything. We just have to get the information. We just have to find a way to understand all this again, because it's just gotten lost. And it's a way of how do you say, reconnecting with all that power.
And also, thank you for saying all these amazing things. I'll just jump in because we have a question that relates exactly to what you were saying. And I think as it is a conversation, it might be interesting to bring that up. So the participants are asking, what do you recommend people who live in big urban centers to have access to more sustainable food or diet? What would you say to someone that lives in, I don't know, a big city somewhere in the world that doesn't farm themselves?
I think it's, you know, search for farmers nearby, or you know, the local markets. And I think if you look for it, you find it, although sometimes it might be a little more difficult in some places. But if you search, you know, you'll find a way. And yeah, I mean, if you buy from local farmers, if you get your food from projects that are in pro of agroecology and, you know, reforestation and regenerative agriculture, then you will sustain this. You know, it's like the more you
will invest on this kind of activity.
Yes, exactly. You're investing in this kind of agriculture. So a conscious consuming is more important, I think, you know, than being an activist. Like if you're more conscious on what you eat, you make a huge difference. You know, if you look for projects, for people, for farmers that do a good job, you know, for the reforestation, for agroforestry and all that, you already can make a huge change just by changing, like, you know, just by being more conscious of what you eat.
Yeah, I feel this goes on with the question with what you feed yourself with. What is it feeding as a cultural system that operates behind the production system? And for this question, Samia, I would also say that I think it's very important for people to really become more aware of the fact that not only should we be looking for organic food, considering like not having pesticides in what you're eating, but really promote more and more the discussion of how we need the food systems projects to be more aligned with the production of forests itself as well, because that's one for us living here in Brasilia, where the population here has a general more access to information and also more power of deciding what to eat, that comes with a better economic familiar structure in comparison to many other parts of Brazil. We have there's a local demand for organic food which is greater than elsewhere in Brazil, and yet people are still just pursuing to buy food that's free from pesticides and free from chemicals. But sometimes if you're just organizing your farming production into a system where you're still working with monocultures, you're still hanging out, not hanging out, but you're still not allowing the evolution of the ecosystem from like less complex vegetation into a wider and more complex vegetation. This is the face of the current agriculture today, be it conventional with pesticides or even organic conventional agriculture. So I think really it comes down into consumers, people elsewhere, wherever they are, to really reach out for these families who are making this job of creating food systems within forests, making it possible to produce vegetables while you're also planting the trees that will nurture the complex forests in the future. Yeah.
Thank you, Sofia.
This question.
That's a very interesting, and I guess the whole Earth Action Hub event is about individual action, because we know climate change can be overwhelming, and sometimes we get quite lost in the middle of all this bad news we have, and a few people feel down, like you feel sad watching all that. But we know that, and here in this event, we gather like amazing people around the world, and they are all doing something. And it's amazing to see that. And really, we get very inspired by your words. And food is something, eating is something that everyone is doing everywhere in the world. So it's awesome to hear from you how we can change the world by eating, like choosing better what we digest. And we are now with our time. We have to stop. I'm sorry. I could hear you for a long day. And also good. It's a pleasure to hear you both. Could you just quickly give a piece of advice for our participants? What inspires you to keep doing what you do? Because I'm sure you faces struggles as everyone. But if you could really sum up in a sentence, what inspires you to wake up every day and do your work, what would you say? It's a hard question.
Which is more. Yeah, it's a hard question.
for me, it's like I've grown up in a food forest system, and for me, it's like my children. It's like I want my children to live what I was able to live, and to have this opportunity to grow up in the forest. But I think it's like, as a whole, is people say here in Brazil, like eating is a political act. So by eating consciously, you can change the world. And basically that's the message I want to bring on to you. Be more conscious on what you ingest.
Exactly. That's kind of what I was thinking about, but I didn't think, well, actually, I just wanted to put out how it's pretty evidence that we need to create social systems that are very conscious and aware of what we are creating for the planet in itself, and how it comes back to all living beings. So sometimes so another message beyond what Gudrun is putting, which I think is the main thing, is for us to really be conscious of the political structures that we end up investing our energy, putting our decision-making power in creating political systems that sometimes are not clear for people's mind how they will, for instance, make it so that agriculture is still an activity that's widely, mainstreamly mining resources rather than creating resources. People, if we're not aware of how our decision-making processes are very responsible for this very practical reality of climate changes and global warming and scarcity of resources and all of that, then we tend to think that the food we choose and the farming's techniques that we are investing don't really matter that much into changing these harsh conditions which we're living in. So definitely food is a very political and philosophical, a cultural matter that drives, that is able to drive what we are doing to our house, to planet. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And that was an amazing conversation. We went from photosynthesis and molecules to political acts and thinking about food. And yeah, I think that was really inspiring for all participants. And I thank you very much. This was our last conversation of the event. And I will welcome you and all the participants to join us in our closing ceremony that will be happening in a few hours now. And thank you so much for all the participants. Whatever you are watching, I hope you are inspired to do also your individual action plan. And please take a look at our art space to renew your energies whenever you're feeling left out for some reason. Thank you so much, Sofia and Gudrun. Have a nice day and a lovely Sunday.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.